Hello, everyone. Love and blessings. Welcome to Dragonfly Heart Medicine podcast. I'm Kristen, your host, Reiki Master Teacher, Sacred Wisdom Activator, Plant Medicine Integrator. Wear a lot of different hats. And hello, it's been almost a year, I think, since the last podcast episode. A lot's been going on in my life, a lot of changes and evolution and grief and so many things. And yeah, but I'm ready to be back and I'm excited to be back with one of my dear friends. And I guess she's also kind of like a mentor of mine in a way as well. Stephanie, I have gone on some of her yoga retreats and I've been to some of her cooking classes, and I just love how relatable she makes everything, and her style of teaching just really resonates with me. And so she's back yet again, and we're going to be talking about some really important things as we move into winter, moving towards the winter solstice, where it's really just a time of more darkness and more time to go within and focus on self-care. So if you want to go ahead and share a little bit more about yourself, that's fine. Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen, so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come on to your show. Well, I am a holistic health coach. I also do a lot of in-person retreats around yoga and detoxes, nutrition and cooking classes, like you just mentioned. And I'm trying to think, what else do I do? I do a lot of things, but I also love to make art, but primarily focused on health coaching and leading retreats right now. But like you, I also wear many hats.
I know sometimes it's hard to introduce myself because I'm like, which things do I want to say this time?
Exactly.
So yeah, we talked a little bit before we recorded. And so our kind of topic for today is really about self-care and how what self-care really does look like on all levels and how it can shift with the seasons. So we're just gonna go ahead and dive right in. So when you talk about self-care, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, self-care is a personalized practice that's really about intentionally cultivating goodness in our lives while moving away from stress, upset, and
Mhm.
frustration. And a lot of that cultivating goodness is really obvious through things like diet and lifestyle, right? When we're eating well, we feel great. When we're getting movement, we have lots more of those feel good hormones moving through our bodies. But it also looks like things like, homeopathy and flower essences, or, taking baths. We do think of that with self care, but it can be really personalized because we are all at different places with our diet and our lifestyle, and we all have very different interests. Some people love yoga, some Pilates, but really finding a routine that works well for us. But self care really relies on self awareness. And also, I believe it should be in alignment with the seasons. So, what I mean by that is, every year we go through all of the seasons and conditions change. The food that's in season changes. The energy of the moment changes. And that self awareness helps us to see where we're at. How am I feeling now? What's going on in the environment? And what's it going to take for me to feel better? What kind of practices do I need in my life in order to stay centered, balanced, focused, clear, aligned, right? So it's really just, all of those practices, food, lifestyle, that help us to take good care of ourselves and cultivate joy in our lives.
Mhm. Yes, I think the part that really resonated with me with what you just said is moving away from stress. Like that is a part of self-care. So if your self-care practice is stressful, then it's not the right one for you. I think
So true.
sometimes I get so busy and my self-care becomes just another thing like I have to check like off
Mm,
for the day, and then it's not really self-care anymore because it doesn't really feel nourishing to me.
yeah, 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 I can
So,
relate to that.
yeah. So let's see. So what for you, what does some of the things you do? for your self-care practice as we move towards winter? Like how does, like kind of what is your self-care practice and how does it shift as you move into winter for you?
Yeah, my self-care practice, that's a great question. So food shifts quite a bit for me. In winter, I don't think of there being an overabundance of fruit, for example. So I'm not going to be making a lot of juice and smoothies.
Mm,
It's more about warm, nourishing foods. I think winter is a good time to go into keto, because you're not
mm,
eating starchy vegetables, you're not eating fruit. Um, and so the way I approach diet is, like in summer, it's more like raw vegan. So it's not that I'm a hardcore meat eater or really into keto, but this is a really good time to go into those practices. Also, warming beverages, consuming a lot more warming spices. How I take in herbs changes throughout the year because they all have very different effects on our body, mind, spirit
mm,
complex. Also, I might be doing more intermittent fasting at this time of year. Waking up earlier, going to sleep much, much earlier, taking advantage of the daylight. For me, my movement winds down. Winter is really about resting and restoring. It's not about, going out and doing sprints. Not that there isn't space for that. If I wake up one day feeling really good and I want to go out and run sprints, I'll go do that. But I cut myself a break in the winter and I really rely more on yin. I think that winter is a great time for self-development because there's more time indoors. So I have a treadmill. It was one thing I had to do to take care of myself in the winter, was purchase a treadmill so that I can be indoors, still moving. I like to watch YouTube videos while I'm on the treadmill and study and learn. So looks more like that for me. As far as my routine, I'm not drinking as much alcohol. I'm really trying to, alcohol messes with my sleep. So
mm.
really trying to nourish myself and be mindful of the things that affect my sleep. Take advantage of the season to really go inward to restore my energy, and then also, protecting my energy and my mental health with boundaries. So boundaries are a little stronger at this time of the year, although learning to work with those all the time. But winter can get really social, even though we're really more supposed to be in our caves. But yet we've got Christmas, and then we've got New Year's, and there can be a lot of demands on our time. So for me, decluttering my schedule in winter, making sure I have lots of space for me time rather than social time, just because that's what makes me feel good and feeds me. Some people start to feel really isolated in winter. And so for them, protecting and guarding that mental health may look more like intentionally connecting with people, right? So, everybody's routine is different. But yeah, I would say really creating a lot more spaciousness to rest, restore, integrate the year that's just unfolded, and yeah, allow time to really accept and make peace with the year, and also to forward vision and to think of, for me, 2023, what does that look like for me socially, in my business, with my family, personal development, creativity, are all my needs being met. So really coming up with a plan, that's really been my focus lately, is intention setting, finding out what would really feed my soul next year, and then really practically and tactically breaking that down into, so what does my week look like, how much childcare do I have, what activities am I focused on Monday versus Tuesday, how many clients can I take, where can I loosen up my schedule and get more space. So really it's about taking stock and planning ahead for the next year.
Yes, the spaciousness is something I resonate with, and really slowing down. That is something that is hard for me to do with the holidays and just so many different things going on. But I want to go back to, there were several things in what you just said that I want to dig a little deeper into. And the first one was kind of eating seasonally, because I
Yeah.
think we don't really do that because we can go to the store and get almost anything we want year round. And so I think for most people, it's not even something they think about. But you also mentioned, how like in the winter and, you've experienced doing kind of more of a keto thing feels good. And then in the summer, more of like a raw vegan thing. And these are diets that people tend to follow for like their life,
I
not
know.
seasons. So can you elaborate a little bit more on like what eating seasonally can look like?
Yeah, I can elaborate on that. First off, I would like to say that I was doing the thing that you're talking about where I was eating all the foods all the time, because we do have a huge overabundance in our food supply. We have avocados and, strawberries available in January, and watermelon. My daughter was eating watermelon today. But I've also been interested in, health and nutrition and living in alignment with nature for a very long time. And so, I've just read lists throughout the years of what's in season. Like at first, it was quite literally, I had to look at lists to really know what was in season in the spring and really know what was in season in the fall. Because, when I was younger, we just went to the store and we got everything all the time. But through that increased awareness over the years and also studying Ayurveda, which is all about cause and effect with food and really knowing how things affect you, there's just been a refinement that's happened, with my diet just through these lenses. And so you're right. Some people do follow these diets their entire lives, and they're coming at it from more of an ethical, moral standpoint of what they believe, is natural or right, or um, cause no harm. And I get all of it. And I was a vegetarian for a long time for moral reasons. And I've tried all of the diets. And the thing with trying all of the diets is you really do learn how foods affect you. And in the winter, we actually have a greater appetite. In Ayurveda, they say our Agni, which is like our metabolic fire, it actually it burns more in order to keep the body warm, which requires more calories and more substantive food. And so we eat heavier and heartier food in the winter, and we're better able to digest these foods at this time, and so it suits us.
Mm.
Whereas in the summer has sort of a lighter energy, and there's fruits and vegetables that are available that are lighter in nature. And so those tend to be the foods that I go to, the things that are fresh and in season, that taste right at the time. And I actually was reading, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's so very interesting that your microbiome actually changes if you're eating seasonally. The bacteria living in your gut will actually shift with the change of food, with the change of season, in order to prepare our body, mind, spirit for the environmental challenges of that season. And, for me, just learning all of these things and just looking at food through these lenses, I've come to a place where I don't want avocados in January or December, unless I'm in Florida and it's warm. But my body, I know, okay, avocados are cold and damp, right? Bananas are cold and damp. Yogurt is cold and damp. These cold and damp foods don't support my body when it's cold and damp outside. When it's cold and damp outside, I really need the opposite of that, right? Lighter, drying foods. So, yeah, just noticing where, again, that self-awareness piece and self-care, right? It's, how am I feeling right now in this moment, and how do I want to feel, and finding balance through opposites, which is a fundamental in Ayurveda.
I love the finding balance through the opposites.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you mentioned both yogurt and bananas because normally those are pretty much like staples in my diet.
Mm,
And the past like couple week or the past week especially, like all of a sudden I have just not even wanted to look at a banana. And
mm,
yesterday I was eating yogurt and it just like it didn't feel right. Like
right.
it didn't feel right. And that's the first time I've really noticed that started to happen. And I've been really craving like things like sweet potatoes,
Mm,
and more of like the root vegetables. And it's, yeah, so you said learning to listen to my body because I think sometimes when I crave certain things, it's like I'm trained to, oh, well, if I'm craving something, it's, for some other reason, or it's like emotional or whatever. But I think, our cravings initially come from when our body needs certain nutrients. Like
Yeah.
if we are craving sweet potatoes, right? They're high in potassium, for example, and they're just grounding. I feel
Yeah.
like for me, I love sweet potatoes. And so, yeah, how can we learn to like listen to these like cravings in like a healthy way?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that really getting down to the root of what's creating the craving, right? A lot of
Mhm.
times it actually is nutritional hunger, right? We crave sweet taste because our body associates sweet taste with a certain nutritional profile, and that's really what it's craving. So our is our nutrition being met? If we're craving something sweet, what sweet food can we consume that's still healthy, right? Um, Making sure we're not thirsty. That's a big one. A lot of people are chronically dehydrated, and they think they're hungry, but actually it's thirst. And thirst is a big one. At winter time, we want to be consuming warm beverages. I never think it's a good idea to consume anything with ice. It's a very common American thing, but in Ayurveda, they say it puts out Agni, which is that metabolic
Mhm.
fire, right? So you don't want to be putting out the metabolic fire, the thing that's keeping us going. So teas, warming beverages, chai, golden milk, lots of spices. Um, yeah. So learning to listen and getting to the root of the craving. Yeah, I think it's just, making, and then if it's something emotional too, right? Like I think it's pretty obvious we recognize when we are uh emotionally needing something and then we turn to food, right? We can tell when we're physically hungry, bringing in that mindfulness piece and really
Mhm.
noticing. So, again, that self awareness with self care is just so important. So, really noticing what is that's driving the craving, and is there a healthy way for me to meet this need?
Mhm.
So for sometimes we're craving companionship or comfort. Maybe it looks like calling a family member or a close friend. Sometimes, for me, it's like a hormone balancing thing, right? Like
Mhm.
I get more cravings when I'm PMSing. And one thing that I have found is using aromatherapy. So I have an oil blend called Moody Girl, and I've just noticed that it seems to bring me into a more balanced place
Mhm.
where I'm not trying to self-soothe through sugar. So finding other ways to self-soothe is
Mhm.
important.
Interesting. Yeah. I love everything that you mentioned about that. And sometimes I find myself like Googling cravings for X, Y, and Z. And then what you'll get on some of the websites is like, actually, well, what are the nutrients that your body might be
Mhm.
craving because of this, or what's in, and other food options
Yeah.
that you can have. And because I think there's so much information out there about foods and diets and this and that. And we really are what we eat. And our food impacts, our gut microbiome, which then impacts like everything, like our ability to just function and so many, and, making sure we're drinking enough water and all of those things. And I know for you, um, food and nutrition have played a really important role in your health journey.
Oh yeah.
Um, if you want to maybe share a little bit about that too.
Yeah, well, I've just always loved food. I mean, to start with, and I would say I came from a mostly culinary family. Both my parents really loved to cook, and in my early childhood, I ate a lot of real food. But then, just like everyone else, I, fell off of that in favor of processed foods. And you're a young adult and you're eating whatever the heck you want all the time.
Mhm.
And then I started to run into health trouble. And in the investigation to figure out what was going on with my health, I uncovered that I had adrenal fatigue, which most people have in the
Mhm.
United States. And really understanding what that meant, and that I was burnt out, and that I needed to nourish my body, and that my body um, can't heal if it's reacting to problematic foods. And so then really finding out, what is my relationship with different foods? How are these foods affecting me? And giving my body the space to heal through nourishing foods. Um, Things like vegetables and bone broth and really high quality
Kitchery.
protein. Kitchery is huge. And that was one thing I wanted to make sure that we mentioned on the call too today was, in alignment with seasonal eating, I do think that regular cleansing is super important for us, for our body, mind, and spirit, but on a very physical level with nutrition and doing different detoxes, right? What you might do in the winter, because I feel I've gotten so sensitive, right, that I feel weighed down at times and I realize, okay, it's time for a cleanse. It's time for a fast. It's time to lighten up. And that can happen any time of year. In the spring and summer, when that happens, it looks like, raw vegan and juicing. But in the wintertime, we don't really have that luxury. So it looks to me more like, I do consider keto a type of cleanse. I do a very clean version of keto. It's not processed foods and heavy dairy. It's clean meats and clean green vegetables. But then also, kitchery cleanses are really great. And a bone broth fast is a really great option in wintertime. So finding those ways to moderate our food intake and give our digestive system breaks while staying in alignment with the seasons was something I wanted to bring up. So yeah, it's all one big journey. I would just say that I've naturally been interested in health and wellness. My interests have been sparked by the things I've seen in the world, by my own health struggles, my family's health struggles. Yeah, and just really seeing that this is a place that I can step in and help humanity at this time, right? So that's where my interest, I would say, comes from, and why the journey has been so specifically related to food.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of times, because we do get so busy, we just get used to eating the same things over and over again too. So I know for me, like I eat the same thing for breakfast almost every day. And it's like sometimes my body is like, what are you doing? Like, can we have something different? So how important do you think variety is for our, I know we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, like eating seasonally, but like what is it about the variety that is good for us?
Yeah, great question. Gosh, it's so important. Well, first off, we are not these like stagnant beings that require all of the nutrition off of the dietary recommendations every day of the year, every meal in these proportions all the time. That's not really how the body works. Really, it's, we go through seasons. We go like in the winter, we're going to get all this rest, hopefully, if we allow ourselves to be in alignment with the seasons, versus the summer where we're going to become kind of depleted. Because we have this outward energy and we're going out all the time, right? So the variety with food, you know sometimes we need more of the detox cleansing properties, right? Like springtime is a natural time to detox, and so those are the things that are in season, right? Those are the things that are showing up. It's things like dandelion and nettles and spring onions, right? Things that are detoxifying. And then in the summer, we start to get into those berries, right? And the berries have all of these different properties and all these like phytonutrients that are really nourishing to our cells. And then, we just have this evolving need from season to season. And when we eat in alignment with the things that are coming up at that time, it keeps us in a state where we're constantly receiving new nutrition. And then the problem with eating the same thing all the time is because in the natural food supply, since we wouldn't have strawberries available all the time, or there wouldn't be the same thing available year round, we end up developing these intolerances, right? Like the body just gets tired of consuming the same stuff. It needs variety. It needs to take breaks. You know, we need times where we're building up calcium in our bones. Then we need times where, we're not eating so much of those foods, right? It's a push and a pull, a give and a take. There's always a different process going on in the body.
Yeah, that makes so much sense about the sensitivities to things. There's a couple of things like I ate so much of when I was vegan that like my body just cannot handle anymore. Like quinoa, like I cannot eat quinoa, like my face will start to itch.
Oh, wow.
And I have to be careful with nuts now too. Like I used to eat a lot of nuts And I can have them in small amounts, but if I start to have too many, like I'll just feel really weird. And so I remember reading somewhere that sometimes if you eat too much of something, your body's way of getting you to like not eat it is to develop like a sensitivity. So it's interesting
Yeah.
that you bring that up. And so we've talked quite a bit about food and how that plays a role into self-care. And so what are some other things that you want to touch on for self-care and like building I think I guess you mentioned this, like you called it like a self-care practice, kind of like we call it a yoga practice. Like it's always something that we're developing and refining, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that this time of year, just cold and flu prevention is really good, right? Like elderberry, running a humidifier. Maybe you need a sun lamp if you have seasonal affective disorder. That can be really helpful. Being sure to like keep active and get outside to stay warm. Really eating healthy, taking this time to like find inspiration and staying connected to this inspired place, pursuing a new passion. I think really like decluttering the schedule and um turning more inward and really scheduling that me time so that you're able to do things like, in the winter, our hair and our skin are likely going to need extra nourishment, so even like spending the night in, taking an Epsom bath and doing a hair or face mask, practices like journaling, reading, meditation, body scans, I think are really great in winter because it really helps you to not so much the reading, but the journaling, the meditation, the body scans really help you to take stock of where you are, to notice where you're at, to touch in with your own spirit, to get still and quiet. I think that's really important at this time of year. Um, you may not be going outside for fitness as much. So at home, it may look more like at home yoga classes or, joining fitness classes, leaving space for a creative outlet, and taking the time to, make music or write poetry or paint or do something that invokes a flow state, because when we get into that flow state, that creative space, all this other stuff, all the mental chatter, all of the things that happened all year long, all of the problems that need solving, all of these things, when we're over here in flow state and in creative mode, all of these things, they're working themselves out. And so I think that wintertime is a really, really good time to step into that space of creativity and flow and inward connection and allow give yourself time and space, give your psyche room to breathe for a minute, and really sort
Mhm.
all that stuff out so that you can step into the new year, from an empowered place, from a clear place. We get so damn busy all the time that we don't give space for that mental chatter to calm down, to find calm, clarity, and focus so that we can live intentional lives, so that we do know that where we're at, so that we do know what we need. So I really think carving out that space is huge.
Mhm.
And oh, go ahead.
I was just saying like, yeah, like I'm resonating. You can keep going.
Yeah, right. Um, and then like I was saying, just really connecting with that source of inspiration, whether that's through courses, books, podcasts, maybe going to the art museum, um, picking up changing your yoga practice, going more into yin, whatever it is, something that's gonna like nourish and inspire. I would also say give yourself things to look forward to. Winter can be kind of a tough time. If you can afford it, if it's in the budget, maybe planning a winter trip, so that you have something out in front of you. I love skiing, I love skiing and I miss living out on the West Coast and being able to do that in the winter. So for me, part of self-care looks like planning a ski trip if I can. I know I'm going to be out in the elements. I'm going to be like getting vigorous activity out in the cold, fresh air. Even breathing in different environments is good for our biome. Our lungs have a microbiome, right? Like we are made up of bacteria, and having that variety and that exposure is not just important with food, it's also important with nature. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do in the winter to sort of take better care of ourselves, to set ourselves up for a good year ahead through coming into rest, reflection, alignment. Yeah.
Yeah, so many things. I love getting fresh air, and it doesn't matter if it's really cold. I still try to get outside at least a little bit every day if I can. And I find, yeah, creating that spaciousness is difficult. A lot of times I know I get so busy that when I finally do have some downtime, I just fall asleep. Like I'm just
Mm,
sleeping. And even though a lot of the things I'm busy with, I enjoy, it's like I still need to say no sometimes. And I still need
yeah.
to have those boundaries you talked about earlier to make sure, that I'm not over extending myself in any way. And I've been really wanting to do like a creative practice lately. Like for me, I love to dance and I don't dance enough. And I've just really been wanting to dance or color or something because
Yeah.
I feel like there's just that side of us that if we do not pay attention to, it gets like stifled and kind of snuffed out, and it's really unfortunate. And I find myself like I'll get kind of mild anxiety,
Mm,
and it took me a long time to figure out what that was. And sometimes it's unprocessed emotions. But
yeah.
other times it's like that inner child that just wants to color and just wants to be a kid and just wants to take time and have fun. And I know you
Yeah.
paint, and I love seeing all your beautiful artwork on Facebook, and I actually
Thank
have
you.
one of your paintings.
Yeah.
So what does your creative process with painting look like? And do you notice like differences like when you don't have as much time to paint or be creative?
Yeah, I do. Gosh, yeah. So creative practices and how they affect me overall. Yeah, I find that I go to creativity more when I'm trying to make sense of things. Like coronavirus, March through July 2020 were off the charts inspirational for me. I mean, I painted so much. And it was just me trying to like make sense of it and feel comfortable and create space for mental processing, unconscious mental processing, not like mental chatter where I'm talking about it, but allowing it to like make sense off in the background. And yeah, there are times when my creative practice doesn't get as much space, right? Like I've been really busy with my coaching practice and getting my business working and all of the parts to running an online business. It's amazing the world we live in today. I have a business degree and I have to go back and get a business coach so that I can know how to operate in today's world. So, but that's also, an important form of self-care. Self-development is we all share these different areas of life, like career, self-development, our home environment, our relationships, our social lives, joy, being able to cultivate joy. We have all of these areas of health that aren't necessarily food and fitness, that also require that we're addressing them. So lately, I have not been painting as much, or with as much intention because I've been more focused on career. But career had taken a back seat for a long time because I was pregnant and then I had a new child. And so it's all about knowing where you're at and what you need. So for me right now, creativity has taken a little bit of a step backwards. But I'm sure it will come to the forefront again, when I'm in that space. But I do like creating art, as an intention setting practice. And I actually do have a free like 3-part video workshop if anybody wants. We can link it.
Oh yeah, we can put
Um,
that.
yeah, but it's just a really nice way to set intentions into a piece of very simple artwork that you can then, have in your space, and it becomes this a reminder. It's a way to stay aligned, with your deepest intentions. And this is all, on a a subconscious level, right? So it's not even you're looking at the painting and focusing on your intentions every day. It's just having it in the space. It's just vibrating that energy. So yeah, I do want to make one more comment about winter and self-care because we just had Thanksgiving. It was lovely. I had a Friendsgiving, we had friends and family. It was wonderful. And during the evening, a friend of mine broke down in tears
Mm,
because she was having a hard time, right? And I've been her so many times, so my heart broke for her, and I really got what she was experiencing. I just want to remind everyone that as far as nature is concerned, Christmas is a day just like any other day, right? It's another it's another day in the year that comes and goes. We as a society put so much pressure on certain days like Thanksgiving and Christmas that it sets us up for failure, right? And what I mean by failure is just stress and anticipation and expectation and disappointment. And I think we just need to like collectively like take the pressure off a little bit, and just
take a
try to
nice, deep, big, cleansing,
yeah.
relaxing, collective breath.
Right? Yes, exactly. One big collective breath and just release all the pressure and expectation around the holidays and really be easy with ourselves. I just wanted to speak to that before the call in.
Yes.
I feel like it was
Oh,
really
yeah.
important.
It is. And I like how you also mentioned like knowing where we're at, that is a part of self-care and it can shift. And I know for me, sometimes if I'm doing all the self-care stuff and I still feel bad or I'm like in those negative emotions, like the question that always comes to my mind first is, well, what am I doing wrong?
Mm,
Like, what am I doing wrong? Why do I still feel like this? Like, I'm supposed to feel better. And so, what I've really had to sit with over the past like week is I don't always need to feel better. I just need to feel where I'm at. And that my self care practice can support me in going more deeply into those feelings instead of trying to get rid of them, which is what I used to do. And so, it's like this completely different lens of looking at things through. And it's been hard. So I just, yeah, and being gentle with myself and going easy on myself and not feeling like I have to be perfect or I have to act a certain way when I'm around my family or when I'm around friends. And so, yeah, that really speaks to what I'm going through as well.
I bet. Yeah. I hope you are giving yourself the space to move through it all.
Mm.
Otherwise it just comes back to haunting
Yeah.
us.
That's what I'm starting to realize too. It's like I can feel it now or I could feel it later. And even though
Yeah.
it may feel like it's so overwhelming and I'm never going to be able to stop, I will stop. It will
Mhm.
end, things will shift, or I can just keep shoving it down and then I'll have like this moment where I just like blow up and it becomes really out of proportion and a lot more difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
But I think,
I think that part of good mental health is authenticity, and compassion and allowing ourselves to be ourselves without all this extra pressure, unnecessary pressure. Um, to be something that we're not, and usually we're the ones putting all the pressure on ourselves. It's not even
mhm,
really coming from other people, and if it is coming from other people, I think it's important to like reevaluate, or create some boundaries with relation to those other people, and really put yourself in like healthy, supportive, nourishing situations and relationships. This is all very important part of self-care. It's not just diet and
mhm,
exercise. It's
no.
yeah, it's our relationships, our social life, our mental health,
Mhm,
cultivating joy, managing our energy, so that we
mhm.
can focus on the things that fulfill us.
Yeah, because it's important to slow down and to really just be with ourselves. Awareness has come up a lot, right? You can't be aware of things and you can't start to make changes if you never take the time to actually slow down to be to get the mind to quiet down so you can really observe what's really going on kind of underneath the surface of that like chatter that we all have. There's the layers and the other things that are deeper below them. And I love how you address self-care as a combination of all of these things. It's not just your diet. It's not just taking a bubble bath, once a week. It's not just yoga. It's not just painting or dancing. It's like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And that the most important thing is to kind of experiment and play around with what works for us as individuals. If somebody listening to this does, goes, oh, well, I'm going to do this and this and this and this because Stephanie and Kristen do it and they seem like they're doing all right. So I'm just going to copy what they're doing. That can be an okay place to start sometimes if you don't have any practice at all. But I love how you speak to it. It's really individual. Everybody's self-care practice should be a little bit different, and it can look different on a different day.
Yes, exactly. And at different times in our life, Yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting watching even just like my yoga practice change throughout the years, like
Mhm.
10 years ago, all I wanted to do was a handstand. And I was just always practicing handstand practice all the time, and wearing myself out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like, okay, I'm gonna settle in for some yin, or
Yes.
even, yeah, exactly, like more deeply nourishing, slower
Mhm.
practices, right?
Yeah, for me too. In the beginning, I was like all about some power yoga, lots of
Right.
vinyasa, ashtanga, and then I went the complete opposite and did a bunch of yin stuff. And
Mhm.
now I kind of like this like medium, like like just slow flow with a little bit of like, the balance of like strength and flexibility. And I only do yoga for like 20 or 30 minutes now. Like I don't do it. I just for whatever my body just doesn't want to do it anymore, like for long periods of time. Like I used to love to do like an hour to an hour and a half of yoga, and now it's like sometimes it's 10 minutes, and that's okay because that's
Yeah.
just where I'm at right now, and it'll change again, and I might go back to hour-long practices at some point, or I might not. And it's just giving myself permission to change and be open.
Yeah, yeah, being open. And I like what you said about exploring. And, the more tools we have in our toolkit for self-care, the better off we are. And sometimes it's a matter of an identity shift. It's really interesting thinking about identity with relation to health for me, right? Like I've identified for a long time as a yogi. And I've actually had to kind of like step away from that a little bit. I still do the yoga retreats and I am a yogi. I am a yogi. That is in me and that's a part of me. But I'm like, as far as how I'm presenting to the world, I've had to kind of take the step back and broaden. And it's more, okay, this is about health. This isn't specifically about yoga. And so that means that I can practice Pilates, right? And, I've been having more back pain. Well, not really more back pain. It got aggravated, but it got me thinking about, long-term bone health and my core and strength. And
Mhm.
now maybe I want to jump into Pilates a little bit, right? So who you identify as, I think is really important. I had a friend tell me one time, she was like, I just want to be the kind of person that does yoga. And I was like, well, then do some yoga. You have to identify as a yogi and go to yoga. Or when it comes to food and boundaries, right? Like I am a healthy person. I am not someone who eats frozen pizzas all the time for dinner. I'm not someone who does that. And so then you don't do that, right? Like you make this
Mhm.
decision about who you are and who you aren't. And as we age, I think allowing that to shift and open and, broaden so that, yeah, we're fully equipped with all kinds of tools to take care of ourselves, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. The more we have when we get in those moments where we are overwhelmed and we are really stressed, it's easier to pick from a big, toolbox to try to figure out what you might need in that moment to minimize your stress versus only having like one or two things.
Yeah.
And I feel like now I have so many different things in my toolkit and it's really beneficial. And I love having conversations with other like-minded individuals like this, because then I remember other things. Like I just remembered kitchery. Like, yes, I need to do a kitchery cleanse, like after eating all of that pie over Thanksgiving. And I mean, I made the pies myself, so I could control how much like sugar and stuff went in them, but it's still pie at the end of the day, you know? And it's like my body's like, we just need a break from all this sugar and all these calories. And like I haven't even eaten that much the past couple of days because I just haven't felt hungry. But yeah, the having lots of different things to go to fall back on, I think is really helpful. That way when we do get in a pinch, I've even thought of actually writing out all of my favorite self-care practices and like
Yeah.
actually putting them in a box. And if I'm having a really stressful day and it's like I don't really know what to do, just reach in that box and pull out and it might say coloring. And I'll be like, oh, that actually sounds like that might calm me down. I'm gonna try that. Because sometimes for me, when I get really overwhelmed, like it's even though I know I have all these practices, when my anxious mind is in control, it's like all of that stuff. Like I
Right.
just forget about it. And I'm just
Right.
like, oh, I'm just so stressed. I'm just so anxious. I don't know what to do. And then I'm, have my little box. I just pull something out. I actually haven't done it, but I think I've made my box. But I think that's something that I'm going to do because I think it's something that would be really useful for me.
I think so. Yeah. It was so funny when I was pregnant, I went through a health crisis, and then I had a newborn, and I had all of these things coexisting. Adrenal fatigue, as you know, I had bladder cancer. I no longer have that, thank God. And that was a big part of my health reboot, which you witnessed me going through, and having all of these having all of these things going on, and then I had a newborn and I was consumed with nursing her, and I was just really busy, and then there was this time that opened up where I had a babysitter and I had time.
Mm,
And I had forgotten how to take care of myself. And the things that were working for me, 5 years ago were no longer working for me because my body was depleted and I was exhausted and I didn't have the energy to do the same things. And so I made a list. I made a list and I hung it up in the bathroom on the bathroom mirror. And whenever the babysitter showed up, because at that time I didn't have work, I didn't have any obligation. I had cleared my life quite literally so I could have a child. Um, and then, yeah, going back and seeing that list, and, Tessa, our babysitter, would show up and I would look and I'd be like, oh, yeah, gentle yoga. I could do some gentle yoga right now. Or, oh, breath work out on the porch. Yeah, I could do that. Right. And like figuring out what I could handle in those moments to start to rebuild strength and to restore myself.
yes, I love it, love it, love it. Well, we're getting close to the 45-minute mark. It started,
Okay.
it's been going by kind of fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to kind of start to wrap things up a little bit, what else? Is there anything else, or is there like, just something you feel like you left out that you really want to make sure that you touch on?
I mean, not really. I feel like we've talked quite a bit about seasonal eating and what that looks like, what detoxes might look like, how movement might shift at this time, shifting that energy toward inward, that rest and restoration, cutting ourselves a break, taking some of the pressure off, and really coming into a space of reflection and realignment. I think the biggest thing for me right now at this time of year, shifting into winter, besides nourishing myself in all of the ways that I can, but yeah, really just getting clear about the path ahead, setting those intentions, and just really like setting myself up for success, and then also collectively, we're coming into this time of change with the new year, and just, yeah, what do we want to bring in as a collective? What do we want to welcome in? What changes do we want to see? I think just really keeping the energy positive and inspired and focusing on that will take us pretty far.
Yes, the new year is right around the corner. And I love the idea of, yeah, just really putting our focus into what do we want this next year to look like, and really sitting with the intention and, not necessarily doing a New Year's resolution, but something, a little bit, I don't know, like deeper or a little bit, just a little bit, I don't know. New Year's resolution to me always just kind of sounds like this thing that you think of that you're going to do, but you're not really going to end up following through. That's
Mhm.
like it just has that kind of energy, whereas like setting the intention for your year feels a little bit more like grounded, but also kind of fluid, like it could, shift, but you're just setting kind of this general intention for what you would like your year to look like and how you want to feel and the
Yeah.
things that you need to do to make you feel, that way and embody what you want to create.
Yeah, totally. I feel like even the word resolution, it's like with New Year's resolutions, it's like you have to have resolve, which like requires it sounds like adversity, right?
Mhm.
Having to push through. Whereas I feel like intention setting is more about coming into alignment with purpose, what nourishes your soul. It works with the energies that are, right? Like who am
Mhm.
I? Who
Yes.
am I? What am I doing here? What feeds me? How can I contribute in a meaningful way? Right? Like intentions get more at the core of that. They're not so tactical. It's
Mhm.
more like the bigger picture of what's going on.
Mhm.
And when we're thinking in those terms, our life naturally aligns to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have enjoyed talking with you about these topics, and it's coming at just a perfect time in my life where I really need to reevaluate my self-care and what it looks like and make it a priority, because I think sometimes I fall at the bottom of my list. It's like, okay,
Mm,
well, I do my job and then I take care of my partner and then me.
yeah,
And that just doesn't, work.
it doesn't.
It leads to burnout and stress and weight gain and all the things. And so this conversation has just reminded me of how important it is to make that a priority, to make self-care a priority and not focus so much on the amount of time that I'm doing self-care, but on the quality of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So instead of focusing like, oh, I need to have like 2 hours of self-care a day, that sound might sound like too much, but if I could just do yoga for 10 minutes and really be fully present in that yoga,
Hmm.
then that's what my self-care might look like for that day. And so, you know making it a priority but not stressing myself out with
Yeah,
trying to meet these unrealistic expectations.
that's right. Finding that balance.
Absolutely. So you have inspired that within me.
I'm so
And
glad.
it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you to anybody watching or listening. I will start putting regular episodes out again until it feels good. I may just keep going, or it may be like before, where it'll be a few months and then I take a break. But I appreciate everybody's support, and thank you again so much, Stephanie, for being here. And are you doing any coaching right now?
I am. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
I've been pretty busy, but I've got a graduate happening. I'm really
Ooh,
excited
that
to.
is very exciting.
Yep. So I'll have more space in my schedule if anybody is looking for a little extra.
Yes. So we will have all her contact information down below in the description. So you can reach out to her if you are interested in learning more. You also have a blog where you post a lot of your recipes and they're super yummy. So we'll make sure we put that link up as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. I
Welcome.
really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who has viewed. Really appreciate you. Wishing you all health and happiness.
Happy 2023 coming
That's
up
right.
soon. All right. Bye, everybody.